Hey everyone, James from TeaDB here, bringing you another Inbetweenisode. So today I am going to be drinking two teas actually on this episode. Also going to be just talking a little bit about specialist and generalist vendors. One of my favorite Marshaln posts, or one of my favorite of recent years at least, is a post on generalists versus specialists. I'll put it in the notes below. And he basically talks about, he compares it to tea to Japanese food, where a lot of the best Japanese vendors specialize in one thing. So there might be a Japanese restaurant that specializes in selling soba, and you would want to buy soba from them versus a vendor that is maybe offering a whole variety of Japanese food. And the idea is basically that they are specialized in it, they have more repetitions, they know what they're doing for it, they're going to do a good job. And he basically says the same thing holds true for a lot of tea vendors as well. So, and I think that's generally pretty good advice. I mean, obviously you can certainly find exceptions to the rule. Bad pu'er vendors that are specialized in pu'er, for instance, you can find those. But I think it's sort of a good thing to have in the back of your mind. It's like someone like Wui Origin, who I like to buy Wui Yancha from, is very specialized in Wui. And in the same sense, he sort of takes the logic a bit further and talks about how drinkers can be fairly specialized. I think it probably goes without saying that there are certain types of teas that I drink personally, and you should probably take my word more seriously than you would for like white tea, for instance, where, you know, I drink it a few times a year, but, you know, my opinion probably shouldn't hold as much sway for evaluating a white tea as it would, I don't know, like a semi-aged raw pour or something that I'll have more recently. So yeah, just a little bit of thoughts on that. So one specialist vendor that recently opened, and I was actually surprised to see this open, is a vendor called Three Bears Tea. So Three Bears Tea is run by a guy, Jason, who I've met, who is based also here in Seattle. Good guy. He's a very veteran tea drinker. He's been drinking for far longer than I have. So you can definitely find his sort of footprint on the internet going back to the mid-2000s, which is pretty cool. I was surprised that, it's been probably a long time since he started drinking tea, and he is opening up a shop, and the shop is specializing in a tea that I do not drink all that often. I've had dozens of examples, but it's not one of my daily drinks, but it is Liubao tea. So that's pretty exciting, because that is something that I don't think we see super specialized in the Western market. Probably the closest we get is someone like Chawang Shop. I ordered a bunch of samples from him just to try to drink through. Wanted to give them a shout out, and I have not quite finished going through the samples, but wanted to bring on a couple teas to the show. Liubao, probably the easiest comparison is to pu'er, especially the ripened Liubao. And he actually sells ripened raw. Ripe Liubao, I think, is probably the default of what you're going to run into online. It has a wet piling process, sort of like ripe pu'er. Ripe pu'er's process was, I believe, actually based off of it from Liubao. Liubao growing area, different from pu'er's. They use the small leaf varietal there rather than the large leaf Asamaka that pu'er uses. So that's just a little bit of background. One thing I also liked about Three Bear site is he actually has pretty nice descriptions and goes into the background of each tea, which I think is helpful for this sort of tea that, you know, isn't terribly covered and there's probably sort of a lack of general education and knowledge in the Western sphere for sure. So I think it's both valuable as far as a resource as well as just offering some different teas to try. Okay, so let's get going. Okay, so I am having the ripe Liubao first. So this is the 2015/2018 Three Cranes 2506 Liubao. Comes in a big 1 kilogram basket. As you see, I have a sample, not the basket. Basket sells for $178 for 1,000 grams, or a kilogram, so that's 17-18 cents a gram. Probably a little more expensive for the samples. This tea, you'll especially for a lot of the more commonly pressed Liubaos, you're going to see the 3 cranes label an awful lot. It's a big factory. I think they do quite a variety of teas. And the 2015 is, I believe, when the material is from, and then it was actually pressed into the sort of big basket in 2018. And the tea comes like relatively loose, loose certainly compared to what you might be used to for pu'er. Brews up this real nice color. Yeah, let's take a quick smell. Yeah, so definitely the closest. I just feel like these teas are just such close cousins to ripe pu'er. It's hard for me to sometimes pick up certain notes of ripe pu'er too. It's woody, but in sort of a slightly different sense. A lot of people talk about betel nut. I've never had betel nut, so I don't know if I can actually make that tasting note. But interesting. So I'm having this in much of the way that I normally have my ripe in the morning with my wife. So this is probably like steep number 5 here. So gonna let it hang out for just a little bit. Using about 8 grams for this pot. And I do think in general, Liu Bao, you can push it a little bit more than pu'er. Really nice clarity on that. Cheers. So smooth, sweet, definitely one, if you are a ripe pu'er drinker, definitely one that to sort of check out and compare and see how it compares with your taste for that. There's a light creaminess to it. I think overall it's like definitely sort of has that same sort of flavor you get from the aroma, sort of like a real nice, robust, woody base to it. Don't know if I brewed that quite long enough, but we will see. I'm actually, as someone that doesn't brew these teas quite so often, the comparison I have to make is versus ripe pu'er. So this is a little bit lighter color than I'm used to getting out of a ripe pu'er, but you know, it's fine. It's still pretty like dark, really beautiful red color. Yeah, so really easy to drink. In the last couple mornings, I had the this tea, the 2014/2017 tea, which is a year older, and I actually ended up preferring this one. This comes with grade 3 material, which is, you know, kind of small, but not like super small. It's also supposedly a blend of a couple different fermentation levels, so it might be clear if we look at sort of the wet leaf and see sort of the color gradation there. And yeah. Cheers. Yeah, this is just a real solid brew. Definitely one worth checking out if you are thinking about ordering some samples. I think probably most of the teas there are worth checking out, just purely for education even. Yeah, so I'm going to be moving on to another tea, and this one is probably going to be a little more unique, just because it's older, and it also comes from a Liubao style raw that you aren't exposed to all that much in the Western market, at least. So looking forward to giving that a go here. Okay, so let's move on to the raw Liubao. So this, as you might be able to tell, very similar to pu'er. Raw, it means it has not gone through the wet piling process that this tea went through. This tea is also from the late 1990s, so it has over 20 years of age on it, if that is correct. It was aged... where was it? It was aged in somewhere around, I don't think it was aged in Wuzhou, somewhere around there in a moderate tropical climate. And it reminds me a lot of just sort of the humidity level and the smells that you get from some teas stored in southern China or Taiwan. Really comforting aroma for me. Maybe this sort of thing isn't for everyone, but for me personally, I really like it. And farmer style, if you read Jason's description, is sort of a It's just a little bit of a rougher style. He says the average tea leaf grade, which is sort of the size of the leaf, is 3, but there might be a little bit more mixed in there rather than something more, I don't know, factory and more produced more recently, such as this one, which has, I think I said grade 3, but I think it's grade 2 leaves. So a little bit more all over the place as that goes. Heishi is the origin material, supposedly one of the nicer places to make the teas. I really don't know the geography of Guangxi province at all, so we will take Jason's word for it. Cheers. It's actually quite an interesting contrast going between that ripe to this, because this smells very much like a very aged tea, and I think it kind of is. It has that really comforting, almost like menthol-y nature to it. Camphor, wood, reminds me a lot of notes you just get from well-stored pu'er. But because we just had this ripe tea, more of the active and lively nature of this is really coming to the forefront. A lot of the texture, I think, is particularly kind of interesting. Definitely still sort of in that sort of vague, large category of flavors that you'd probably call woody, but all right. So that was actually steep 4. Brewing this, I do not have a pot devoted to Liubao, so we are just using a Shibo. Using about 5.5 grams of leaf, 70 milliliter pot. Gonna let that hang out for a bit. Been brewing through these last week or so. Seems like my general experience is that a lot of them benefit pretty heavily from being pushed. These are pretty well matured teas. This in the case of being ripened or wet piled, and this more in the case of just being well aged. For me, this tea is very clean, and I think it's cool to see sort of, I think probably you can find something like this if you hunt around a bit, but something like this raw Liubao, frankly, I haven't looked for it, but I have not seen a ton of it. My tea tray is backwards. It keeps bothering me. I don't notice until I hit record. But so definitely check out the raw Liubao too. A really nice contrast. It's like dank in exactly the right ways. So smooth, creamy, but still has that like just a hint of sharpness to it. Nice round body, good soft, creamy texture. Really enjoying this tea. Yeah. And I'm gonna try not to go too fast too. But let me have a quick sip of this, which is steep number 5, I believe. So woody, maybe even a hint of nuttiness. I don't know if this is betel nut or not. I think he has some that specifically go for that flavor profile. I don't think this is one of them. So maybe I'll need to try one of those and try to develop that betel nut taste bud in my mouth so I know what it is. So thank you, Jason, for starting the shop. And people should definitely check it out. Check out threebearstea.com. And buy a bunch of samples. Go through a tasting of a bunch of different Liubaos like I've been doing. So I think it's a lot of fun, especially for those that are looking to explore some of the tea categories that are lesser covered and want to just check out the different types of tea. I think this is the perfect shop to try out one of the teas that is very rarely covered. So thank you again, and I will see you all next time.